After her parents passed away, Emily was taken in by her father's close friend and became a member of the Johnson family. At the age of 16, Jack Johnson kissed her while drunk and told her she was only allowed to like him. When she turned 18, he coaxed her into intimacy, promising to be with her for a lifetime. However, when she proposed marriage at 24, he coldly refused and even brought a young girl who resembled her to a gathering, publicly humiliating her. Emily finally realized that their 8-year relationship had been nothing more than a game to Jack Johnson. Determined to move on, she decided to let go of the man she once deeply loved and pursue her own future. Yet, Jack Johnson's regret and persistence soon followed. Can Emily truly break free from the shadows of her past and embrace a new life? After my parents passed away, I was taken in by my father's close friend and became a member of the Johnson family. On my 16th birthday, Jack Johnson got drunk and kissed me, and told me that I was only allowed to like him. When I was 18, he coaxed me to become physically intimate, saying that he wanted to be entangled with me for a lifetime. When I was 24, I wanted to get married. But he said that he would never get married. After a month of the Cold War, a friend organized a gathering in the hope of reconciling us. On that day, Jack Johnson brought a young girl with him. The girl smiled shyly, and she looked exactly like me when I was 18. A friend stood up for me. "What the hell do you take Emily as?" Jack Johnson sneered. "Why are you all reacting so strongly? I just consider Emily as my sister. It can't be that just because she has lived in my house for so many years, I have to marry her, right?" After saying that, he lowered his head and kissed the young girlfriend on her hair. Then he looked around at the people present. "Don't spread rumors about the relationship between me and Emily, or it will make my girlfriend misunderstand. She's young and hard to please." Sitting opposite him, Ethan gritted his teeth fiercely. "Jack Johnson, are you serious? We all grew up together." He was standing up for me. After all, everyone knew the relationship between me and Jack Johnson very well. Jack Johnson glanced at him casually. He lit a cigarette. With a cold face. "Ethan, since when have you become so close to Emily? When did it become your turn to stand up for her?" His eyes swept over me indifferently. Then he pinched his girlfriend's face. "Honey, you go and wait for me outside. It's too noisy here. Brother will take you to another place later." The girl was very obedient. She glanced at him timidly and left obediently. After the girl left, Jack Johnson lifted his eyelids and stared at me. "Emily, it was a matter of mutual consent. Is it interesting for you to keep inciting everyone to force me into marriage again and again?" Before I could answer, he blew out a smoke ring and smiled indifferently. "I've never said that you're my girlfriend, have I?" I stared blankly at this face that I had loved for 8 years, and suddenly felt that he was a stranger. Ethan stood up and was about to beat him up. "Jack Johnson, saying such things, are you even human?" After I held him back tightly, he said through gritted teeth, "If you really want to break up, you could have done it more decently. Is this the way you insult people?" Jack Johnson's eyes were cold. "Ethan, you're defending her so much. Do you like her? Fine. I don't want her anymore. You can pursue her. Anyway, after sleeping with her for so many years, I'm tired of her even if she's not tired of me." As soon as the words were out, in the corner, Ryan shattered a wine glass. It drew everyone's attention to him. Ryan was considered the unattainable star among our group. When I first came to the Johnson family at the age of 12, I was most afraid of him. He always looked mature for his age, always had a serious face, and always talked very little. Regarding the things between me and Jack Johnson, whether it was being affectionate or quarreling, he had never shown any extra emotions. But now he suddenly lost his composure. It surprised me a bit. He looked at Jack Johnson coldly. "You've gone too far." "What? Are you also going to lecture me?" Jack Johnson sneered. "I didn't expect that you all seem to be more anxious than anyone else about the affairs of my Johnson family. Emily, should I praise you for being capable?" At the age of 16, he said the same thing to me. It was just because someone put a love letter in my school bag and he found it. It was my birthday that day. He looked at me with a half smile. "The top student in the grade who is also the class heartthrob writes really mushy things." That's what he said. But after the crowd dispersed, he burst into my room, pinned me against the door, and lowered his head to kiss me. After a gentle kiss, he rubbed against my neck affectionately. "Emily, you're not allowed to like others. You're only allowed to like me." At that time, he was like a poor little dog, and his tone was extremely aggrieved. I lowered my eyes and didn't look into his eyes now. I just felt it was too inconsistent. I just felt a little sting in my heart. But I also knew that it was time to settle things with him. "Jack Johnson, since everyone is here today, let's make everything clear once and for all." He extinguished the cigarette. "Go ahead." Even though my eyes were so sour that it was hard to bear, I still stubbornly raised my eyes. "Just as you said, we have no relationship. From now on, we'll go our separate ways. Jack Johnson's fingers gripping the wineglass bulged with veins. Emily, you want to draw a clear line with me? I pinched my palm hard. You have a girlfriend. Isn't it necessary to keep a distance from the opposite sex? I remembered when I was 17, I went to give him clothes. But I happened to see the school beauty cornering him in the changing room. Jack Johnson, I've been chasing you from junior high school to high school. I like you so much. Please be with me. I quickly retreated to the corner. I heard Jack Johnson's cold voice. You like me. What does that have to do with me? Get out of the way. The school beauty wouldn't give up. She grabbed his hand, and tears were about to fall. Don't be so mean to me. Don't ignore me. I'll be really sad. Jack Johnson didn't show any mercy. He pulled out his hand and looked down at her. I have someone I like. Keeping a distance from the opposite sex, isn't that what should be done? The school beauty stood there stunned. Her tears wet her face, and she looked so pitiful. Go away. If the person I like sees this, she'll be jealous, and I can't appease her. The school beauty wiped away her tears and ran away. Looking at her leaving back, I thought Jack Johnson was really heartless. But I didn't know when he came up from behind and hugged me. Have you seen enough? Aren't you going to praise me? You're so cruel, I said. He smiled naughtily. Emily, I only love you, so you can only love me too. Remember that? His kiss fell. The minty smell with a youthful aura surrounded me. It made me realize what it was like to be loved without reservation by someone. Jack Johnson probably thought of that too. He pursed his lips and remained silent. I stood up and walked in front of him, taking off the ring. He begged that ring from his mother when I was 22. He said it was a family heirloom. He insisted on putting it on me. Now that our relationship has come to an end, I naturally don't need it anymore. Jack Johnson, here's the ring back to you. His brows furrowed tightly. He looked up at me, and his lips were trembling faintly. I don't take back the things I give away. This isn't appropriate. I put the ring in front of him. But he suddenly stood up, neither taking the ring nor looking at me. My girlfriend is still outside. It was as if he was running away in a hurry. The room fell into a dead silence for a moment. Ethan comforted me. Emily, you've had so many years of relationship. Jack Johnson is just being angry with you. Angry? A month ago, it was also here. In the same position. I had prepared a wedding dress and wanted to propose to Jack Johnson in front of everyone. He lost a game and chose the truth-telling option. I took the opportunity to ask him, have you ever thought about getting married? In the dim light, Jack Johnson's expression was half lit and half hidden, and then he answered, I won't get married. I'm afraid of marriage. At that moment, I was stunned on the spot. And because I made it clear in public, he was very unhappy. That day, he left very early. The proposal I had prepared ended up in vain. Now it seems that he wasn't afraid of marriage. He just didn't want to marry me. I suddenly thought of a saying. Ambiguous beginnings often lead to messy endings. Jack Johnson and I might just stop here. On the way back, Ryan was driving the car. He didn't talk much originally, and I wasn't in the mood to chat either. The air fell silent again, and only the soft music spread quietly in the confined space. Emily, if you... Before he could finish his sentence, Ethan's call came in. Emily, Jack Johnson got into a fight with someone. When we arrived, the conflict had already ended. Outside the crowd, I looked at Jack Johnson from a distance. I didn't know if it was because of the adrenaline from the fight or because he was drunk. He had a flushed face and was sitting in the middle of the sofa, hugging his young girlfriend tightly. The girl buried her head shyly, and he lifted her chin and kissed her. There was a burst of cheering around. Someone who knew me asked him, Bro, didn't you say you were going to marry Emily? Why do you have a little lover now? Jack Johnson's face immediately darkened. When did I say I was going to marry her? The person was taken aback for a moment and seemed to want to speak up for me. But the girl in your arms looks so much like Emily. Jack Johnson put down the wineglass heavily. Don't mention this name in front of me from now on, or get out. From today on, this is your sister-in-law. Say hello to your sister-in-law. The people present looked at each other, but they couldn't bring themselves to greet the young girl in his arms. I didn't want to watch anymore, so I turned around and left. At the door, I met Ethan who had just arrived. What's going on with him? Is he hurt? Does he need to go to the hospital? He looked inside. Just in time to see Jack Johnson holding the girl on his lap and rubbing against her neck. Just like how he used to be affectionate with me when he liked me so much. Ethan backed out again. He cursed. I didn't let them send me off. I walked to the riverside alone and couldn't help but think of the past. After the college entrance examination at the age of 18, Jack Johnson coaxed me to become physically intimate. He said he wanted to be entangled with me for a lifetime. He was such an unruly person outside. Because of my one word of worry, he gave up all dangerous sports. He stayed by my side obediently. He went to the same university as me and was my perfect boyfriend. It made everyone envy, saying that his love for me was really remarkable. When I was 21, our relationship was discovered by Jack Johnson's parents. Mr. Johnson whipped him with a cane, saying he was a scoundrel. He held his head up and didn't shed a single tear. He told them that he was serious about me and that he would give me happiness. Even though his back was covered in blood and I was crying bitterly, he could still smile and comfort me, saying it didn't hurt at all. Later, he went to his mother to ask for the ring and put it on me. You're a member of the Johnson family now. Ethan once asked him if his true feelings would change over time and if he would change his heart. He kicked Ethan and said that unless he died, it was impossible for him not to love me in this life. Until last year, we got through the 7-year itch. He still held me and said that his love for me would last until death. He was such an enthusiastic person. When he was good to someone, he couldn't wait for the whole world to know. His love was passionate and crazy. And I was such a slow to warm person. It took me a long time to fall in love, but once I did, my love would last. So much so that now he had moved on, yet I was still stuck in the memories of the past. I remember the year he put the ring on me. I took him to the graves of my parents. He held my hand and made a promise. Uncle and aunt, don't worry, I will be good to Emily for my whole life. It turned out that his whole life was only 8 years. It turned out that the love I thought I had was just a relationship as a sexual acquaintance. I wiped away the cold tears on my face. There was a ding sound from my phone. An email message came. The application I had previously submitted to be a doctor with Doctors Without Borders had been approved. Doctors Without Borders, an international medical humanitarian organization. I would set off in a week. This had always been my dream. Before applying, I was always afraid of being separated from Jack Johnson. I was afraid that he would be reluctant to part with me, and I even thought of all kinds of ways to coax him. Now I didn't need those, and it saved me a lot of trouble. The private hospital I worked in was quite accommodating, and I had informed them in advance. So although the director tried to persuade me to stay, he still signed the papers for me. However, this week's work had already been arranged, and I still had to finish it. As I passed the emergency room, I unexpectedly saw Jack Johnson and his new girlfriend. The little girl was so painful that she curled up in his arms, with cold sweat breaking out and tears wetting her cheeks. Brother, it hurts. It really hurts. I shouldn't have done that last night. Woo-woo. Jack Johnson's brows and eyes showed annoyance, but in the presence of the doctor, he still coaxed her patiently. Yeah, it's my fault. The doctor frowned. It's a ruptured corpus luteum. It's normal for her to be in pain now. You young people also. The doctor didn't finish his sentence and turned to write the medical record. You should also exercise some self-restraint. She's only 18 years old. Sigh. I turned around and bent over. Suddenly, I felt so disgusted that I wanted to vomit. Even my heart seemed to be pulled and it ached. But I clenched my fingers tightly and told myself, Emily, it's okay. It's just withdrawal symptoms. Dr. Emily, Dr. Sue is looking for you to hand over the patient. A familiar nurse came closer. Do you have a stomachache? Did you skip breakfast again? I shook my head. As soon as I took a step, I was grabbed by Jack Johnson who had rushed out. Why didn't you have breakfast? His voice was full of concern, and he really seemed to care about me and feel pity for my situation. Do you want to faint from low blood sugar again? Emily, can't you take more responsibility for your own body? As he said that, he took out a bar of chocolate from his bag and stuffed it into my mouth. When I was busy with experiments at school, I always forgot to eat. After Jack Johnson knew about it, no matter where he was, he would show up in front of me on time and would only let me go after he supervised me to have a good meal. Only in our junior year of college, he went with his parents to inspect a project in another place. I was so absorbed in a piece of data that when I came out after a whole day of work, I accidentally fainted. He stayed in the school hospital with red eyes and then fed me porridge fiercely. Emily, you might as well starve to death. But from that day on, he would always prepare chocolates or candies at any time in case I needed them. Thinking of this, the tears at the corners of my eyes could hardly be held back. Honey, it hurts so much. The weak female voice instantly pulled me back to reality. I quickly pushed Jack Johnson away. Your girlfriend is calling for you. Then I quickly adjusted my mood and threw myself into work. It started to rain heavily near the end of the workday. Everyone complained that it would definitely be difficult to get a taxi. I wrapped my coat tightly and placed an order in advance. Later, when the rain subsided, I came out with my colleagues. I saw Jack Johnson leaning against the car, holding a black umbrella and smoking a cigarette. After meeting my gaze, he extinguished the cigarette butt and said in a familiar tone, I'll give you a ride. I shook my head. No need. He pursed his lips. Aren't you going to ask me anything about what happened this morning? I looked down at how long it would take for the car to arrive and said in a flat tone. I'm not interested in other people's privacy. I vaguely felt that Jack Johnson's breathing was getting heavier. I raised my eyes. He pulled out a cold smile. Emily, do you have to talk to me like this? Jack Johnson, I can't be friends with my ex-lover. We've already broken up. I thought that not pestering each other was the best way to leave some dignity for both of us. You mean that I'm pestering you? Emily, you're being a little too confident about yourself. The tips of Jack Johnson's fingers holding the umbrella handle turned white. That would be great if that's not the case. I retracted my gaze, opened the car door, and didn't look at him again. But he grabbed my hand, and his tone softened a bit. Tomorrow is my parents' 30th wedding anniversary. They hope you can come. When my family had an accident, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson extended a helping hand to me. They were really good to me and treated me like their own daughter. Although I moved out when I went to college. But Mrs. Johnson would come to my place from time to cook for me, and she would always buy things and bring them to me when she went shopping. When our relationship was discovered, they also blamed Jack Johnson, fearing that he would let me down. They had never been mean to me. Before getting off work, I also received a special message from Mrs. Johnson, saying that she missed me. I will go. He still didn't let go of my hand. Is there anything else? I frowned. We haven't told them about our breakup. Tomorrow is a happy day, and I hope you can keep it a secret for now. After a pause, I nodded. Okay. I showed up at the Johnson family's house with a gift. I was about to go find Mrs. Johnson when suddenly someone hugged my waist. Honey, you're finally here. Jack Johnson hugged me and rubbed his head against my hair affectionately. But his eyes looked behind me. Mom, I told you that Emily would definitely come. Auntie, this is a gift. Then I tried to pry Jack Johnson's hand away without showing it. He seemed to be deliberately opposing me and held me even tighter. Mrs. Johnson saw that we seemed to be playing around and couldn't help but laugh. You'll be 25 in a few days, and you're still so childish. After you get married, let Emily teach you a lesson. Jack Johnson's warm breath was right above my head. Mom, what do you know? I'm only childish with the person I love. My dear wife won't have the heart to teach me a lesson, right? My fingers slowly curled inward. How could he call me wife so naturally when he didn't love me anymore? When Mrs. Johnson went to greet other guests, I broke free from him. Enough is enough. He stared at me and slowly smiled. You're not still attached to me, are you? Otherwise, what are you afraid of? But I noticed that a message popped up on his unlocked phone on the table. Thank you, brother, for the gift. Tilda. Brother, I miss you. I'm not in pain anymore. Can I come to see you? When the guests had all left, I was also ready to leave. Mrs. Johnson tried to persuade me to stay. I haven't seen you for a long time. Emily, Auntie has a lot of private things to talk to you about. Tomorrow I'll ask the driver to send you to the hospital early. Stay with Auntie, okay? Jack Johnson beside me put his arm around my shoulder. I'll send you tomorrow. Stay, honey, stay. Auntie has always kept your room the way it was. Mrs. Johnson was very gentle and looked at me expectantly. I suddenly thought of my deceased mother, and finally I nodded. After chatting with her for a while, I went to the balcony and planned to sit there for a while. I vaguely heard some ambiguous sounds. By the rockery in the garden on the first floor, Jack Johnson seemed to be saying something to his young girlfriend. He made her blush and laugh. It seemed that he noticed my gaze. Jack Johnson looked up and gave me an extremely cold look. He was completely different from the way he was acting coquettishly and calling me wife just now. I turned around and smiled self-deprecatingly. It turned out that a man's love could be faked. I didn't sleep well that night. On one hand, there was the young and high-spirited Jack Johnson holding my hand and smiling brightly. Emily, I like you so much. On the other hand, there was the grown-up Jack Johnson looking at me indifferently. Emily, it was just a relationship as sexual acquaintances. Even if you proposed to me on your own initiative, neither would I marry you. In a cold sweat, I felt someone hug me from behind, squeezing me so hard that I could hardly breathe. I thought I was dreaming and tried my best to open my eyes. Then his breath hit the back of my ear. And then a series of delicate kisses started to spread from my neck. One hand reached under the hem of my nightgown. When the exposed skin felt the coolness, I realized that it wasn't a dream. When Jack Johnson was about to lift me onto his body, I kicked him and turned on the table lamp. Jack Johnson, are you crazy? At this moment, he seemed to be drunk, still reeking of alcohol, with a flushed face. His dark eyes looked at me in a daze. Emily, Tilda, what are you doing? Honey, give me a hug, just like when we were together, the way we flirted. Emily, honey Tilda. He moved clumsily towards me to kiss me, as if he wasn't sober yet. I slapped him. Jack Johnson, we're already over. He lay on the bed blankly, muttering to himself. Emily, give me a kiss. There was no point in talking to a drunk. I got up and started to put on my clothes. I left in the dark of the night. I didn't see Jack Johnson for several days. The things in the hospital were almost taken care of. The day before I left, Ethan called me and asked me to go to a place for praying and blessing. I refused. I need to go home and pack some things, and there's a gathering with my colleagues in the evening. Before I was about to hang up, Ethan asked, Jack Johnson has been sick and hospitalized for 3 days. Do you know that? After saying that, he also realized it was wrong. Who cares anyway? He might as well die. Emily, forget I said that. I opened my phone and saw the post Jack Johnson made on his social media. He was indeed in the hospital. The caption on the first day was, broken rib, having a fever, and no one to feel sorry for me. The second day, someone feels sorry for me. The picture was of his girlfriend feeding him porridge. The third day, with love, the illness gets better quickly. The picture was also of the two of them. It seemed that he was deliberately trying to provoke me. But I just smiled faintly and then deleted him from my contacts. The place in my heart also became calm. I knew that I had successfully overcome my attachment to him. So I sent a message to Ethan. Help me with something tomorrow. In the evening, my colleagues held a farewell party for me. When I went to the restroom in the middle, I vaguely heard Jack Johnson's voice. Little girls shouldn't drink. I'll drink it for her. He tilted his head back and drank 3 glasses of wine. The moment he put down the glass, our eyes met. I averted my gaze and went back to the private room. Emily, we really don't want you to leave. When will you set off? Just as the words were spoken, Jack Johnson pulled me out of the room with a dark face. He asked eagerly, where are you going? I'm going for an exchange at another hospital. I expressionlessly pulled my hand away from his. He seemed to heave a sigh of relief. Emily, tomorrow is my birthday. Oh, seeing that I wasn't interested, he put his hand on my shoulder. You have to come. He was always so domineering. He always loved ordering people around. Only later did I realize that in this relationship, he always took the dominant position and led me to follow his rhythm step by step. It also made me forget the question I should have asked at the beginning when I was 16. Jack Johnson, why did you kiss me? What's our relationship? But fortunately, everything is over now. It's meaningless to discuss the past things now. Emily, I'm waiting for you. I lowered my eyes and didn't respond. You, honey, come in quickly Tilda. His girlfriend stuck her head out and called him affectionately, which also stopped the words he was about to say next. After Jack Johnson gave me a deep look, he still went back with her. After he left, Ryan came out from the shadows and handed me a lucky stone. Ethan went to pray for blessings with his girlfriend. I also got this for your safety and good luck. I took it. The characters, Emily, were on it. Thank you. He put one hand in his pocket and nodded. I know you're going to be a doctor with Doctors Without Borders. I raised my eyes. He had already looked elsewhere. Don't worry. I'll keep this a secret for you. I won't let Jack Johnson bother you. Thank you. When I was about to leave, he gently called out to me. Emily, Ryan's expression was hidden in the dim light, and he let out a soft laugh. May your days be filled with passion, and your heart with freedom. Just before boarding the plane, the group chat was still filled with various pictures of Jack Johnson's birthday party. Among the flooding messages, someone asked me, Sister Emily, will you come? Without hesitation, I sent a no. After thinking about it, I clicked to leave the group. Those who decide to look forward won't linger on the past anymore. It was true that I loved him before. It's also true that I don't love him now. I once read a book that said when a person is extremely disappointed, they actually don't even want to talk. Making a big fuss about leaving is all just a test. At that time, I thought that with such a deep connection and long entanglement between Jack Johnson and me, we wouldn't reach this point. But now I finally understand that a real departure is indeed silent. It's just an ordinary morning, putting on the most ordinary clothes, and then giving up the relationship that has lasted for many years. Before the plane took off, I deleted all of Jack Johnson's contact information. I also said goodbye to my youth. Jack Johnson, who had been deleted, was looking at the message Emily sent in the group chat at this moment and frowned. The word was like a curse nailed to his heart. He didn't know how long he had been looking at it. Until his young girlfriend's delicate hand hugged his waist. Brother, are you not happy? Jack Johnson pushed her away roughly. Who told you to touch me on your own? Get lost. The girl was someone he specially hired to make Emily jealous. He hated being pressured into marriage and being tied down. But Emily always went against him. She even bribed everyone to stand on her side, as if accusing him of being a scumbag. Ethan, who grew up with him, also stood on her side. Even Ryan spoke up for her. It wasn't that he didn't want to marry Emily. He just hated her way of pressuring him into marriage. So he found a woman to remind her that men shouldn't be tied down too tightly, or they would run away. He planned to teach her a lesson to make her behave, and then tell her the truth. So yesterday Jack Johnson insisted that she come to the birthday party because he had prepared a proposal ceremony, and she would surely be touched. Naturally, she would forgive his well-intentioned warning to her. But why hadn't she come yet? The words she said in the group chat must be out of anger, right? Jack Johnson drank glass after glass of wine. He kept looking towards the door. On previous birthdays, Emily had started preparing very early. This time, she didn't show any signs at all. Even in the worst of their quarrels, she had never been this heartless. He suddenly couldn't understand Emily anymore. Why wasn't she angry when he deliberately showed affection with another woman? Why didn't she make a scene or question him? As long as she made a fuss, he would have easily made up with her. But this week, Emily had been looking at him like a stranger. Even when he deliberately posted so many suggestive posts on his social media about being sick, she hadn't reached out to him once. Jack Johnson felt very annoyed. Until 12 o'clock at night passed and Emily still didn't show up. And there wasn't a single birthday wish on his phone. He lit a cigarette and admitted defeat. Forget it, he wouldn't quarrel with her anymore. He surrendered. Jack Johnson finally couldn't help but call Emily. It prompted that the number couldn't be reached. He kept calling and gradually became irritable. Maybe she was working the night shift? He tried to comfort himself. So he sent a message to Emily. When will you get off work? I'll pick you up. But he received a big red exclamation mark. This meant she had blocked him. He stared at it for a long time, and the tear in his heart grew bigger and bigger. He angrily threw his phone on the sofa. Emily, you're really something. But he still picked up the car keys and prepared to go to the hospital. Ethan pushed the door open and threw a gift box at Jack Johnson. What are you doing? Ethan let out a cold snort and was about to leave. Jack Johnson grabbed his sleeve. Are you deaf? Ethan sneered. Emily asked me to return the ring to you. Where is she? Why didn't she come? Why should she come? To watch you being affectionate with someone else and break her heart? Ethan's eyes were as cold as ice. Jack Johnson, if it weren't for the fact that we grew up together, I would really beat you up. No one will wait for you in the same place forever. You don't deserve Emily. You'll regret it in the future. He flicked his sleeve and left. Jack Johnson looked at his back and crushed the wine glass. Regret? Emily, it's true that I've spoiled you too much. Isn't this just to force me to bow my head to you? I won't do it. I want to see where you can go without me. 3 months passed. I had treated a lot of patients at the temporary medical station. I also felt that I was continuing the path of my parents. My father was a war correspondent, and my mother was a police officer. They both sacrificed on the front line. Their mission was now in my hands. Sometimes when I heard the gunshots and explosions in the distance, it seemed that I was having a conversation with my parents in my soul. They told me, Emily, you're the best. I just didn't expect to see Jack Johnson here. He stood there from a distance, looking thinner than before, with a haggard expression. After a long journey, his clothes were also stained with dust. He just stood there motionless, looking at me, his eyes turning red, as if he was about to cry the next second. Emily, I've been looking for you. I just glanced at him briefly and then continued to treat the patient. I didn't have time to accompany him in acting out an expired display of affection. The medical facilities were backward, there were not enough staff, and there was a risk of terrorist attacks at any time. In such an environment where people might leave at any moment, life was extremely precious. No one cared where he came from or who he came for. Late at night, I dragged my tired body back to the temporarily built tent. Jack Johnson was waiting there. After washing my face briefly, I pulled him out, afraid of disturbing others' rest. Are you here to cause trouble? Do you know how dangerous it is here? But the next second, he had already hugged me tightly in his arms. Emily, do you know how much I miss you? I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have said those words and done those ridiculous and irrational things to hurt you. I know I was wrong. Come back with me, okay? His voice was hoarse, and big tears fell onto my neck. Like a child who had made a mistake, he could only repeat those 2 sentences. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Even though my hands were so tired that I could hardly lift them, I still pushed him away. Have you finished? At this moment, his face was covered with mottled tears, his eyes were red, and he looked like a poor little dog that no one wanted. Who would have thought? A few months ago, Jack Johnson was so arrogant, believing that I would never leave him. Now he was so embarrassed and humble, begging for my forgiveness. Seeing that I was unmoved, he lost control of his emotions. Why didn't you tell me you were leaving? Emily, we've had so many years of relationship. Do you have no heart? It was really annoying. I forced myself to stay conscious. Jack Johnson, I don't have time to argue with you. I don't care what you think of me. It doesn't matter. Because I don't care about you anymore, and I don't love you anymore. So, please don't bother me anymore, okay? He stubbornly held my hand, his lips trembling. But I love you. Emily, I love you. I can explain everything. It's not that I didn't want to marry you. I just didn't want you to push me too hard. I thought I should be the one to propose. We've been together for 8 years. Don't be so cruel, please. I let out a sigh and pulled my hand away from his. Jack Johnson, the moment you said you never regarded me as your girlfriend, there was no future for us. You should leave. Jack Johnson didn't leave. Instead, he stayed. There were not enough medical staff, so he served as a laborer, carrying people back and forth. The young master with a cleanliness habit didn't mind getting dirty or tired anymore. And because he accompanied me to classes in college and learned some nursing skills, he could also help with bandaging and treating simple wounds. When I told him to leave, he looked pitiful. Who will send me back? I secretly asked someone to bring me here secretly, and that person has already left. There's a war outside, and the transportation is cut off. If you really want me to die, I might as well just run into the gunfire. I was silent and speechless. I had to ignore him. I thought that when the food he brought was all eaten up, he would leave on his own. Seeing that I didn't want to talk to him, he didn't say much either. He just silently watched me and arranged everything for me. I never thought that Jack Johnson would one day become so humble. He said, when you first came to my house at the age of 12, you were also so defensive against me. You thought I was annoying and talkative and didn't talk to me. So I pretended to be deep and made myself seem more mature. And gradually you opened your heart to me. Emily, I still have the patience to make you accept me again. But he didn't know that my motto was not to dwell on the past and not to repeat the same mistakes. For those who have hurt me, I can never forgive them. One day, while I was doing an operation, I suddenly heard a very loud shelling sound outside. And the ground was shaking. Evacuate immediately. Everyone evacuate immediately. The harsh voice came from the radio. I hurriedly sewed up the wound, and my fingers were trembling. Don't panic, Emily. I forced myself to calm down. Finally, I treated the wound well, and other doctors wheeled the patient out. I took off my gloves and ran out of the house. There was already a huge fire in the distance. And there were all kinds of gunshots. I didn't expect that the terrorists would suddenly launch an attack on our temporary medical station. Everyone at the temporary medical station was evacuating in an orderly manner. The atmosphere was tense and it seemed that life and death were only a moment away. When I took my eyes back, Jack Johnson grabbed my hand anxiously. Emily, let's go quickly. It was too late. Watch out. The moment I was pushed down, a stray bullet exploded behind me. I immediately had tinnitus. Emily, Emily. Jack Johnson's anxious and out-of-breath voice came from above my head. I'm okay. The place where he pushed me down was just in front of the house. These buildings were already shaky and at risk of collapsing. We have to leave quickly. Who would have thought that just as we stood up, a bomb exploded beside us again? It damaged the already unstable house. Before I lost consciousness, I seemed to hear Jack Johnson calling my name with a trembling voice. I don't know how long I was in a coma before I slowly woke up. There was a warm feeling on my wrist, and someone had been holding my hand. Jack Johnson? There was no response. There was a gap in the collapsed area, and Jack Johnson and I were in it. It was pitch black all around. I didn't know if there were other people around. I instinctively squeezed his hand tightly. Jack Johnson, don't fall asleep. In such a situation, sometimes if you fall into a coma, you may never wake up again. My lower body was buried, and I couldn't move. I could only reach out to touch him. Who would have thought that when my hand reached out, I touched a steel bar on his back. There was wet liquid around. My mind went blank immediately. I didn't know how deep the steel bar had penetrated. I also didn't know how long it had been there. He must have been in a state of shock. If he lost too much blood, the consequences would be unimaginable. I quickly let go of his hand and reached into my bag. Fortunately, the bandages I carried with me were still there. My eyes gradually adapted to the darkness, and I cleaned the blood on his back and tried to move the steel bar. It was no use. Am I going to die? In the suffocating darkness, I suddenly heard Jack Johnson's hoarse and weak voice. No, you won't. No matter whether he was a scumbag or not. As a doctor, saving lives and helping the wounded was ingrained in my bones. Jack Johnson, trust me, I won't let you die. My voice choked up as I spoke. Don't cry, Emily. You see, it's a good thing I'm here. Otherwise, you would be the one getting hurt this time. As I was treating his wound, he intermittently made sounds from his chest. I remember the time my dad beat me, and you cried until your eyes were swollen when you saw my wounds. At that time, I thought that someone as cold and aloof as Emily could also show such emotional fluctuations. At that moment, I thought you loved me the most. Quote, his hand touched my face, and his tone was very soft as a feather. I hired someone to pretend to be my girlfriend to make you angry. I wanted you to make a scene with me, and then I would tell you the truth, to tell you that I didn't not want to marry you. But why did you say those words of cutting off all ties with me so calmly and indifferently? Why didn't you make a fuss? I hated your calmness. I felt that you didn't love me as much as I thought, so I wanted to test you. That kiss was just a fake shot. I didn't really kiss her. Things in the hospital that day weren't what you thought. She was playing around with her roommate, and after strenuous exercise and coughing, her corpus luteum ruptured. I took her to your hospital because I wanted to see your reaction, hoping that you would quarrel with me and question me. The more you said nothing, the more out of control I became. Emily, I just wanted you to be soft with me. Why did we end up breaking up? Ryan stopped me from coming to find you. All the messages I sent and the calls I made disappeared without a trace. That's when I realized how wrong I was. My dad found out about this and beat me up again. My mom even threatened to disown me. They like you so much, and it makes me look like a fool even more. On countless nights when you weren't with me, I kept thinking that if on the day of the truth-telling game, I looked into your eyes and said that I wanted to get married and that the only name of my bride was Emily, would the result have been different? I wiped the tears from his face and said calmly, stop talking. You need to conserve your strength now. We still have to wait for rescue. In the dark, I couldn't see his face clearly. I just heard him ask cautiously, if we can be rescued, Emily, will you give me a chance? In the face of life and death, I couldn't bring myself to say no cruelly. I just remained silent. Then I instructed him to move his body and pull out the steel bar. Fortunately, it hadn't penetrated too deeply. But the blood still kept flowing. I tried to stop the bleeding. Jack Johnson, hold on, hold on. Finally, we waited for the rescue from the embassy. Ryan also came. In the hospital in the safe area, Jack Johnson lay quietly on the hospital bed. We weren't buried for too long, but he lost a lot of blood, and now he had just been in a coma for a few days. After he wakes up, take him back to the country. What about you? Ryan asked me. It's very dangerous here. Do you still want to stay? I nodded. This is my mission. There are still more patients who need my help. I'll be okay. Later, someone from the organization will come to pick me up. He was silent. Just as he was about to say something, Jack Johnson woke up. I handed him a glass of warm water and helped him sit up to drink it. He was taken aback when he saw Ryan there. Ryan stood up. I'll go outside and ask about the situation. He was giving us some space. I gave him a grateful look and then turned back. Jack Johnson's face was pale. His lips had lost their color, and there were many scratches on his face. He got those injuries while protecting me. I'm fine. You don't have to worry about me. He tried to hold my hand, but I subtly pulled it away. I still thought I should make everything clear. Jack Johnson, I think what you said that day was ridiculous. You can't push all the blame on me. You should admit that your heart had already started to waver. After all, you were tired of our 8-year relationship and lacked the freshness. That's why you made up excuses, saying that I pushed you too hard and that I didn't care about you anymore. If I had made a big scene to save our relationship at that time, would you really have told me the truth as you said? You would just think that you finally got rid of a trouble like me and that your decision was right. Or rather, you used your so-called test to conduct an obedience test on me. If I could tolerate it and forgive you at that time, who knows if you wouldn't go even further in the future. You've known me for a long time. You should know my personality. Or are you overconfident and think that I must be yours? You've disappointed me again and again. So even though you're lying here, it's impossible for us to get back together. Jack Johnson clenched the bed sheet tightly, and tears fell silently. His voice was stuck in his throat, hoarse and unpleasant. Is it really impossible for us to go back? I gave a light laugh. Mr. Johnson, it can't be that just because you're injured, I have to marry you in return, right? I gave back the words he had said to me. Jack Johnson was stunned in place. Maybe he never expected that one day the boomerang would hit him. The door closed, and Ryan leaned against the wall. I kept your departure a secret from him, and he fought with me. This was the second fight between us. From Ryan, I learned another story. That day, my preparation to propose during the truth-telling game annoyed Jack Johnson. After he left, I hid in the corridor around the corner and cried alone. Ryan passed by while smoking and handed me a handkerchief. In fact, he didn't ask anything, and I didn't say anything either. It was just that after my eyes were swollen from crying, I almost missed a step when going downstairs, and he helped me. Jack Johnson saw it. He thought you were using me to make him jealous, so he found someone to make you jealous too. That night, he was drunk and ran to my house and punched me directly. He thought I liked you, so he was jealous and told me not to have any ideas about you, or we wouldn't be friends anymore. My eyes widened in surprise. Ryan lowered his eyes and smiled. I told him I didn't. I hoped you two would be together happily. That was the truth. He raised his eyes. I suppressed the news of his search for you. Later, when he found out, he questioned me if I was just waiting for this opportunity to steal you away, so I did it on purpose. I felt a bit speechless. He always likes to see others as his imaginary enemies. He said the same thing about Ethan last time. Don't take it seriously. He's always childish. Yeah. Ryan glanced at me and then looked into the distance. Jack Johnson can always say what's on his mind freely, but it can also hurt people. Fortunately, I don't need to care about it anymore. There was a car downstairs waiting to pick me up. I nodded at Ryan. I have to go. Then I took out the lucky stone from around my neck, smiled, and said, thank you, and thank Ethan too. It's great to have friends like you. The lucky stone is really useful. Yeah, we're friends. Friends. He murmured these two words. When I reached the stairs, Jack Johnson chased after me. He accidentally fell down and burst into tears. Emily, please don't leave. Don't abandon me. I just looked at him calmly. Emily, we've had an 8-year relationship. Don't treat me like this. Without you, what should I do in the future? I love you. I really love you. Give me a chance. I swear I'll never let your true feelings down again. Please. I ignored his crying and pleading. He should know that Emily is a very stubborn person and won't look back once she makes a decision. Jack Johnson, no one can't live without someone else. Look forward. When I got in the car, he chased after me to the first floor. His eyes looking at me were pitiful and broken, and then he squatted on the ground and cried loudly. I opened the car door directly. When the car started, I suddenly remembered that when I was 16, Jack Johnson and I went to see a youth movie. In the movie, the boy kept testing the girl's tolerance through various small things he thought were trivial, wanting the girl to give him endless so-called security. But after the girl learned the truth, she turned around and left, leaving the boy to regret and try to win her back. Jack Johnson laughed at that time. How could you have the heart to test her and cross her boundaries if you truly love someone? Emily, I won't let you suffer such grievances in the future. If one day I dare to hurt you, I wish I would lose the one I love forever. The Jack Johnson at that time probably didn't expect that the bullet he fired at the age of 16 would hit him right between the eyebrows at the age of 25.